Hey there, and welcome to Heritage Farms. Today we are going to be planting potatoes, and I'm going to show you exactly what it is that you need to do when you're planting potatoes, how to know whether or not you should cut them in half, and exactly how you want to do that because there's a specific way to cut them in half to maximize your number of potato seeds, and then how to plant them in a almost free container. So come along with us. It's going to be a lot of fun. So you might think that you need a lot of space to plant potatoes, but they actually prefer to be grown in a hill or a mound, and so they make a perfect container garden vegetable, and you can grow them right out on your patio or in your backyard. You'll need a scale and your seed potatoes. I got these from a local nursery, but I've also heard that you can use organic potatoes from your grocery store. And the scale is what we're going to use to weigh them to determine whether or not we can cut them in half. For your container, you can use just about any kind of container you want as long as it's deep enough for the seed potatoes to root down and sprout new potatoes. For our container, we are actually going to be using cardboard boxes that we happen to have on hand. Lane is shoveling in dirt from our property that has been mixed with compost, and we're going to remove all the weeds before we plant the potatoes and make sure that there's nothing else in there other than just the dirt and the compost. I get asked a lot about how we garden with all our little kiddos, and we bring them along with us and give them certain chores and jobs to do, but we also try to keep the fun in it. It takes a lot longer to do it this way, but I know that they are learning valuable skills that will serve them well as they get older, as well as good work ethic. Now I'm ready to start preparing my seed potatoes, and every seed potato should have an eye or a chit on it, at least one. You want to evaluate all the eyes, and if you have any leggy eyes like these, you want to be sure to cut those off so that you don't grow leggy potatoes. I'm also going to be weighing my potatoes to determine which ones can be cut in half and which ones need to be left whole. The rule of thumb for cutting a seed potato in half is 2 or more ounces. This is in order to ensure that you grow the biggest potatoes possible. The reason why you would want to cut your seed potatoes in half is to maximize the number of seed potatoes that you have to plant. This one here is 3 ounces, so it's a great candidate to be cut in half. When you are cutting your seed potatoes, you want to make sure that each piece has at least one good eye on it. So it doesn't have to be cut perfectly in half or right down the middle. It just has to be cut so that each piece has an eye. You also, like I said, want to cut out the leggy eyes. And when we go to do that, we're going to want to cut deep enough so that it doesn't re-sprout. Now I'm going to go through my potatoes and weigh each one and make a pile of those that can be cut in half and those that need to be kept whole. Alright, time to determine what eyes can be cut off. These eyes all look great on that potato, so I'm going to leave it whole. This one has a couple of leggy eyes, so I'm going to cut them off, and like I said, I'm going to make sure that I cut deep enough that those leggy eyes don't resprout. This potato here has several eyes that are very close together, which means when they sprout, they're going to crowd each other out. So I'm going to cut off the weakest looking one and leave the big eye there so that it can grow healthy, strong potatoes. Now I'm ready to start cutting my bigger seed potatoes in two. And you will see as I go along that, like I said, I don't cut them perfectly evenly. I just want to make sure that each piece has at least one eye on it when I divide them. There is something just so relaxing about any kind of gardening work to me, whether it's digging in the dirt or cutting potatoes in half to get them ready to plant. I just find this such relaxing work, being out in the sunshine, out in the fresh air, and knowing that I am working hard to provide good food for my family. Occasionally, you will come across in your seed potatoes a potato that's really icky and soft and rotten inside, just like this one. I could feel on the outside that it was pretty soft, and when I cut into it, I saw that it was. You can just cut the bad part off if there's enough potato to salvage, or if it's truly terrible, you probably just want to pitch it instead of running the risk of growing a moldy potato alongside your other healthy potatoes. Potatoes love acidic soil, so I've been saving our coffee grounds and I'm going to mix them into the dirt and compost before planting my seed potatoes. You can use any kind of coffee that you have and just save the grounds from that morning and mix it in, and that is really going to help your potatoes thrive and be happy. You just need to add a little bit because you don't want to get the soil too acidic, and a little goes a long way. I'm just mixing the coffee grounds in very lightly. I'm not worried about getting it all the way down to the bottom, just mixing it in enough so that it's dispersed a little bit. Now I'm finally ready to start planting, and I'm going to plant my potatoes about 12 inches apart on all sides. So the bigger boxes can hold about 4 potatoes. The smaller boxes are only going to have 2 potato seeds in them, and I'm going to plant them on opposite ends of the box. First, I'm just going to go through and lay my potatoes out and see how many I have and how much space I actually need to plant all of them. And then I'm going to go back through and press them gently down into the dirt, about ½ inch to an inch deep, depending on the size of the potato. I'm going to make sure that they are fully covered with the dirt, and then I'm going to water them lightly. You may notice that I did not cure my potatoes before planting them. Some gardeners like to cure their potatoes once they've cut them by leaving them out in fresh air, out of direct sunlight, in order to let the cut part scab over or heal. The reason they do this is to prevent the potatoes from becoming moldy or rotten once they're planted. I have never cured my potatoes, and I've never had a problem with them turning moldy or rotten. One way to prevent this is to keep the soil well aerated and to keep the watering so that the potatoes get wet enough that they get the moisture that they need, but not so wet that you're drowning them. If you do consistently end up with moldy or rotten potatoes after planting them, you may want to consider curing them before planting. Now that I've gotten our potatoes into the box, I'm going to cover them up with more dirt. I don't want to use the dirt that's already in the box because I want to make sure that they are mounded in there. So I went and got our giant bucket of dirt, and I'm just going to pour it lightly over the top to make sure that the potatoes are covered about an inch deep. And of course, if you run out of dirt, you have to shovel some more. You can see our kids in the background. They were playing cheetah on this particular day in the tall grass. So they're attacking each other like baby cheetahs would do. The cheetah game was all in good fun, and I just love sitting here watching them play and use their imaginations and pretend and occupy themselves happily outside while we're getting some chores done. Now it's time to water the potatoes, and like I said before, I'm just going to water them just enough to get the soil damp. I don't want to drown them because that is what's going to give me moldy potatoes. In order to prevent mold or rottenness in your seed potatoes, you want to make sure that air can still circulate in the soil where they're growing. I have found in my gardening that usually out of my fear of overwatering, I tend to underwater. And whenever I have a row that I think just isn't growing very well, I notice that after a good rainstorm, it'll really sprout up and do a lot better. And so I'm like, oh no, I haven't been watering that row enough. That's why it's not growing. One way to check to see if you're watering enough or too much or not enough is to just scratch the soil up a little bit with your fingers. If the soil below about ½ an inch or1/4 of an inch isn't wet, then you know that you're not watering enough. If you dig it up with your fingers a little bit and it's just sopping wet like mud, then you know you're watering too much. You want it to be moist but not super dry and not super wet. After watering your potatoes, you want to go back and make sure that the seed potatoes have not come up out of the dirt because of the watering. So if you see any sticking up, you want to just gently press them back in and make sure that they are completely covered with dirt. While pressing the potatoes back down into the dirt, I also checked the level of water in the soil and found that, like I said, I had not watered it deeply enough. The top was very wet, but once I got about a quarter or half an inch in, it was dry. So I'm going to go ahead and go back and water it again. You always want to check the soil for your plants, at least periodically, if not every day, to make sure that you really are getting enough water in there for them to grow and thrive.